All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here doing our preview and prediction for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Mike Leach enters his third season. He's an below 500 record rather so far, 11-13 through 2 years. They've also had no answer for Alabama, only 9 points in the first 2 years. So it's been bumpy, but I think this team's certainly been very underrated because last year they beat NC State, Texas A&M, and Auburn. That was a part of a 7-6 campaign. Some unexpected wins there, and they also lost to Memphis. So it's been very bumpy so far for Mississippi State. The consistency is lacking. Zach Arnett, though, third season. He's a former San Diego State assistant coach, so he certainly knows his way around the defense. Offseason headlines: 17 starters are back. That's the most in the conference. And then 2 wide receivers transferred to rival Ole Miss, including Malik Heath. Looking at the offense, Will Rogers coming off a phenomenal season where he broke records. It was kind of expected. It was a bumpy debut season in this complex air raid. It led to minimal results in 2020, but Rogers, he got a grip on things this past season and delivered, shattered school records, which with this offense isn't exactly mind-blowing, but he was very sharp with decisions, very decisive. He'd find his third, fourth read at times. What are your expectations for Will Rogers this season, Nick?
There's a lot of talent with Will Rogers. I think he's a really talented quarterback. I love his completion percentage, 73.9% last year en route to those record-breaking seasons, broke the records for yards and touchdowns in a single season. 36 touchdowns is certainly impressive considering the 7-6 record. Only 9 interceptions as well for him. Not too bad at all. I like what Rogers can do in the pocket. I think he's a very talented quarterback. He's got a strong arm, can really air the ball out. Perfect for this offense. Mike Leach has found his quarterback. And now that they're entering a third season on campus, I think that the sky's the limit for Will Rogers. He can just continue to sling the ball. If I worry about the type of players he's going to be throwing to, his cast on offense is just not the best in the SEC. So it'll be interesting to see if he's going to have to make a lot of plays this year.
And that's going to lead us to our running game real quick. Obviously they don't run the ball too much, but they were much better this past season than in the year prior where they only had, I think they were like 37 yards per game or something. Yards per catch went up significantly, but the backs play a crucial role. They get Johnson and Marks back here in the backfield. The backs, of course, as pass catchers, very influential in everything that goes on. Will Rogers had 500-plus completions last year. The running backs total, they combined for 162 receptions. So there was guys, they were used heavily. Marks, 83 receptions for 502 yards, and Johnson, another 65 for 4. Both veterans and Dylan Johnson, Jaquavius Marks, that's big for them. I do want to see that yards per carry number to continue to go up a bit. It's obviously not a big worry because I rarely do it, but 2 years ago they're averaging about 2 yards per carry. That's just not good enough. Obviously that's not a big part of their offense, but they do it a little bit, and you'd like to have a little bit more success. We got a supporting cast we're talking about. They returned 3 of the top 5 wide receivers. I don't really have a lot of notes on these guys. They're playing catch the ball and pick up yards after the catch. Jaden Whaley, Austin Williams, 2 of the veterans, they're the most notables. They both had 50-plus receptions for 600 yards. And then Marks, he was the third pass catcher out of the top 5 coming back. They do add Jordan Mosley from Northwestern, Justin Robinson from Georgia. Again, no real notes on these guys. They just seem to fit the system.
I like Austin Williams a lot. I think he's the sort of breakout potential guy here. I think he has some serious upside. I like the size he possesses. I think he's a talented player. He had 617 yards on 52 receptions last year, good for about 11 yards per catch. I like to see what he can do this year. I also think Wally coming back, solid player, another guy who averaged about 11 yards per catch last year, 6 touchdowns as well for him. Interesting to see if these guys can sort of make a play here, considering the quarterback they have thrown to him is pretty talented.
And looking at the offensive line, they get 4 starters back on a unit that Sloan departure, and Charles Cross was a top 10 pick in the draft. So they obviously lose a big key piece of this football team. They need to be better, though, ranked 94th in sacks. This isn't a team that would ideally like to be behind the chains, and they found themselves in that quite often because they were giving up sacks, which that's not a great number because this is an offense that likes to get the ball out hurry. The quarterback should never be on the ground, but he did it a lot. They do get back Nick Jones, Cole Smith, both veteran guards, so I like what they got on the interior. I think they'll continue to progress. Moving to the Bulldogs defense, I was a big fan of this unit last year. It's why I picked them to beat Texas A&M in Aggieland before that game last year. And, this unit just does not get talked about one bit, and it really should mainly because of how the front six has performed. They're 12th in FBS and run defense, was just as good the year prior. They do have some key departures. Aaron Burrow at linebacker, even though he kind of lost his job there. And then Martin Emerson was a third-round pick. So they have some key departures, but I like what they retain on the defensive line and at linebacker. No real overwhelming size. Just some hard workers here in this front six. Nathan Pickering, DeMonte Russell, 2 seniors on the interior. Jaden Crumby, 51 tackles this past season, 6'5", 300 pounds. I really like what he brings to the table. And then Randy Charlton coming off the edge, 4 sacks. He had 7 QB hurries. Tyus Wheat, he was one of my favorite players on this defense. Didn't produce exactly like I thought he would, only 6 sacks, but some of these guys like Crometti and Wheat, Charlton, I think these are setting up for big-time seasons. One big concern, though, 8 players accounted for 27 sacks, and all I've seen was starters. They need better help from these rotational pieces, which I think they will get this fall. What are your thoughts on this defensive line and pass rush?
I am a fan of Randy Charlton and Nathan Pickering. Look at those two. Charlton 35 total tackles last year. Pickering 27. Pickering with 7 tackles for loss. Charlton with 5 tackles for loss, and both of them had 4 sacks. I like to see both of them bump up that sack total. I think Charlton can easily hit 8 or 9, maybe even 10 sacks this season. Pickering can definitely double his total potentially as well. I like to see them returning. I think they have some significant potential. I also think that DeMonte Russell has some talent on the defensive end there. I like to see what he can do as well.
Look at the guys behind them, Jet Johnson, Nathaniel Watson. They both had 80-plus tackles each last year. They were both first and second on the team, respectively. Johnson not very fast, but good awareness, good strong tackler, nice brute strength. I like what he brings to the table. Getting back 2 more veterans here in this front 6/7. I think this will be a top 10 rush defense in college football. Where do you think they stand? I don't think their ceiling's been met. I think they'll continue to get better, and I don't see any regression one bit.
I agree. I don't see any regression with this team. I think top 15, top 20 is kind of where this team fits in. Maybe even top 10 if they can get all cylinders firing. Jet Johnson, I really like what he can do. 6 tackles for loss last year, 86 total tackles. And then Nathaniel Watson, 6 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 83 total tackles for him. I like that sort of combo there. Those guys are both very talented. Jet Johnson battling some injuries this offseason. Hopefully he can be full strength by the time we get to the fall.
And looking at the back end of this 3-3-5 defense, the secondary underperformed a bit last year. They weren't terrible. They just lacked consistency. They did replace Martin Emerson with Marcus Banks from Alabama. Colin Duncan at safety, 46 tackles, 4 pass breakups last year. Emmanuel Forbes, I love this guy. He's showcased tremendous ball skills during his first 2 seasons, 8 picks and 11 pass breakups so far in his career. And he also had 3 pick sixes in 2020, so he has some great vision, ability to locate the ball and house it. Sean Preston, a 5th-year senior. Secondary improved last season. Man coverage has been an issue at times. Emerson gone is a big loss, so I expect a potential regression more than a progression, but more than likely a bit of the same. I think the pass rush, though, those guys being better will certainly give them a boost. I expect the big things from the secondary, but I'm not beating on the table that they will be heavily improved compared to last season, but I do think the defensive line will give them a big edge.
I think the secondary will take a step forward. Another name I look at is Corey Ellington. He had a start in this Liberty Bowl. He is an interesting player. I liked what he could do on the field there in his limited appearances. Sean Preston, like you said, 5th-year senior. I love that leadership coming back for another year. Of course, they bring in Marcus Banks from Alabama, a solid player coming out of Tuscaloosa who just couldn't quite fit in with Nick Saban and Emmanuel Forbes as well. Super talented. I like to see what those two can do at cornerback.
And looking at the schedule preview and prediction, I hate to put this team down at 6-6. Just a brutal schedule. Even non-conference is a little tough. At Arizona, that's not going to be an easy game versus Memphis. And then they jump right into conference play on the 17th of September. This is a very tough schedule. I wish this team success. I love the defense's potential. Just a brutal schedule with much more talented teams, especially in the back half. But they showcased last year with those wins against Auburn, A&M, NC State. They're capable of beating strong opponents. I think a lot of the veterans they get back, that is important. The offense, obviously, they're going to do their thing. And I think the defense, they're going to continue to get better. I think they gave up 26 points per game last year. I think that'll certainly improve by, not a significant margin, but at least a couple points. I think this team can compete with everybody on their schedule, maybe other than Alabama because they've not shown a pulse against them. But I wish this team success, but the back half of the schedule, very tough for the Bulldogs.
It's a tough gauntlet in the SEC West. I like the out-of-conference scheduling for this team. Memphis did beat them last year at the Liberty Bowl. They get the pleasure of having them at home this year. I think that definitely adds to the atmosphere. Traveling to Arizona, it's a very late kickoff around 10 o'clock Eastern. Interesting to see how that game goes for them. They can kind of put that together on the road. Definitely interesting game. I like the game. I like the schedule a little bit. They do get A&M and Arkansas at home. I think that benefits them a little bit. Auburn at home as well. A bit more friendly, but having to play Georgia in the SEC East-West crossover is a brutal pickup for them. They got Alabama on the road. They get Kentucky on the road. Ole Miss on the road in the Egg Bowl. 6-6 is really where this team is going to kind of fit. I just don't see a lot of extra wins on here considering the talent in the SEC.
True, but I also see potential extra losses as well. Auburn and Arkansas will be tough. I think the secondary will have an edge against them. Remember last year, Auburn was up big and blew that one, so we'll see where their head is at. November 5th, though, it's going to be a long time since they played each other, but I wish this team success. 6-6, that's going to be the final verdict, but I do think there's some interesting games on here, like Ole Miss, maybe even Georgia. They could steal one. Not highly likely, but like this team, like the guys they get back, like Mike Leach, so I'm rooting for him. That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Nick, as always, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope this team the best luck in the fall.
Yeah, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.